Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to let you know what we need for week 74 of the new Builder Stash and Craft. I did tell you at the end of week 73 that we were going to need glycerin and gelatin, and I was able to show you the glycerin, but I couldn't find my gelatin, so I wanted to show you what that looks like. This is from Walmart and it's unflavored gelatin. We're going to need 7.25 ounce packets, or the packets are each 7 grams. We will need 7 packets, so you'll need 2 of these boxes. We will need 2 6-ounce bottles of glycerin. So that's what we will need, but I did not tell you that we were going to need, there's a couple things for storage once your jelly plate is done, and so I wanted to go over that with you also. So we're going to need 2 glycerins, 7 packets of gelatin, which is going to be 2 boxes of the gelatin. And then at the Dollar Tree, I picked up these aluminum pans. They come in a 2-pack. And I also picked up a 2-pack of, this is the cutting board at the Dollar Tree, because we need something to store our plate on. We'll also need some cardboard. We'll need something to store our jelly plate on when it's done, because in the last series, I stored my jelly plate in the pan that I made it in, and the pan rusted, and it rusted my jelly plate. Now, I have my original jelly plate from, I think it's about 10 years ago, and it still is not rusted. It's because I put it on a piece of glass, and then I took the pan that I molded it in, and I just flip it over on top, but because the jelly plate is shorter than the pan itself, when I flip the pan over, the pan does not touch the jelly plate because the outside edges are a little bit wider than the jelly plate itself. But I picked this up so that we can use this because our other pan is not very tall, the one we're going to mold it in. So we want something that will cover it up, that'll keep the dust off it and keep things from falling on it and dinging it and that type of thing. So we are going to need a couple of good-sized pieces of cardboard, one that's a little bigger than the cutting mat, and one that is the size of the inside of here. Because what I did was I cut a piece of cardboard the size of the middle of this pan because they're not very sturdy. And then I just took the 2 of them and I put the cardboard in between them, and then I put a little bit of our super glue and a little bit of our tacky glue on both sides of the cardboard. Put down one pan, put the cardboard in it, took the other pan and put it on top, and just pressed that together, and just kept coming and pressing and letting it dry for a good amount of time, because really it's not getting any air to the glue. But that made this a whole lot more solid, so that if somebody were to set something on top of it, something super heavy would dent it, but just something falling on it or being set on it is not going to ruin, your jelly plate's going to be safe. So that was the 2 things I did not tell you that we needed to pick up was, so we'll pick up one of these sets of pans, and we will pick up a set of the cutting mats. And so that will be another $2.50 that I will take off the bank. Other things that we're going to need that are already in our stash, or things that we should have at home. So we're going to need a couple paper towel rolls and or bath tissue rolls. So we'll need a few of those. And we'll need our roller that we made our roller stamps. When we made our roller stamps, we'll need that roller. And a pair of scissors and a pencil, or I like to use our ruler and cutting board and a knife to cut the toilet paper rolls or the paper towel rolls. And but you can use scissors. That's okay too. I just find it easier to cut a straight line with these. But we have them in our stash, so we'll need those. And we're going to need the pan that we bought for our shaving cream papers. This is what we will use to mold our jelly plate. We'll need our paint. We'll need papers of all sorts, even papers like just an old envelope. So because this has got a kind of a cool check on it, so that would make a really nice paper to color. And then any type of textures that you have. Now, I'm just using textures that I have in my house or in my stash, but you don't have to have what I have. I'm going to just give you some ideas. This is just a mesh. Now, a lot of times you get like potatoes or onions or something, and they come in a mesh. not this one particularly, but they come in a mesh netting. Those are really cool to use. And if you have some that they're different nettings, like different size holes and stuff, that's cool. Use them, you know, keep them all because they make a different texture. So this is just an old doily and a paper doily. And so, you know, paper doilies can work good. Plus then you've colored your paper doily and you can use that in your projects. Things like plastic doilies. This was a great big plastic doily. It was a big square one. And so I cut off pieces of it. So I would have like, this was in the middle, and but it gives me different textures. And then I cut off the outside edge because I thought that that would make a neat corner on a page. And, you know, and then this is actually a metal filigree off of something, but it doesn't make the whole design like you would think. Only the high raised parts will touch, but that still is kind of cool. And this was a coaster of some sort and a piece of ribbon that has texture to it. Bubble wrap, of course, I'm sure you've seen people use bubble wrap. This is really tiny, then medium or large. Those are really fun to use. And I have a couple of plastic doilies. These work really great. And I found these at a secondhand store a long time ago. And but they make really good texture. And I have a couple that they look the same, but they're a couple different sizes. So just anything that, and also the roller stamps that we made. These roller stamps are going to work great with our jelly plate, so we'll use those too. So anything that you can think of that would make texture. I mean, if you look at the back of this, this would make texture. Now, I don't really want to put this on there, but if you have something like this that you don't use, you can punch holes in cardboard and that type of thing, or cut shapes out of cardboard, and you know, and just have different things for texture. So look around the house and see what you have, things that have a texture to them that you don't mind getting paint all over it. So, and I don't know if I said, we're going to need our paint and we're going to need paper. So, and then I just wanted to give you a couple of tips because I have made my jelly plate. I'm going to show it to you now. So this is my jelly plate. And I'm going to tell you a couple of tips. Number one is you're supposed to let them sit 3 to 5 hours. I took it, mine was solid at 2 hours. So I took it out of the pan. And a couple things happened when I did that. I didn't wait long enough. So wait 3 to 5 hours. Let it set overnight. Let it get nice and sturdy. So when I took it out of the pan, it stretched. So remember how I said with my other jelly plate, I just took my pan and flipped it over on top? Well, my old pan fits that way. This pan will not fit back on top of the jelly plate because this jelly plate is bigger than this pan. Because when I took it out, it stretched because I didn't wait long enough. And possibly I might have, with the other one, I might have just flipped it over instead of pulling it out of the pan. When you take it out of the pan, the jelly plate's in the pan, you have to work it like this. And then maybe I just loosened the whole thing up and dumped it. I really honestly can't tell you now. I don't remember. But this one I took it out, but I took it out at 2 hours, so it stretched. It also ripped. I have a little tiny rip here. And the biggest thing that I noticed is when I took it out, there were no bubbles. This was the bottom because, you know, no matter what, you take it out and you flip it over, whether you flip it out of the pan or whether you take it out and flip it over. The bottom of the pan, what's touching the bottom of the pan, that's the part that's going to be your top. When I flipped it out, there were no bubbles on it. Bubbles raised to the surface. So any bubbles that were in the plate, they would have raised to the bottom of my jelly plate because they would have raised to the surface. As a matter of fact, there really aren't any bubbles on here. But where are the bubbles? Now the bubbles are on the top of my jelly plate because it wasn't set yet. So those bubbles did work their way to the top. At that point, I had flipped it on here and the bubbles came to the top. And so I should have let it sit the 3 to 5 hours. My original plate, I did 7 hours just because that's how long it took me to get back to it. So let it sit 3 to 5. I would say let it sit 5 hours or 7 or overnight. Let it sit. It's exciting to get to it. I was excited to see how it worked because this pan has a little bit of a lip in it. in the bottom, so you can see right there. And I was wondering how that would do. That really didn't, it's not going to affect the printing at all. These bubbles may affect the printing. And if they do, I will remelt this jelly plate and pour it again, and then I'm going to let it sit long enough. So definitely let it sit long enough, because like I said, I've got one that's 10 years old. And we're going to try that one of these days and see how well it still works, because I haven't used it in quite a while. But they last a long time, but you just have to have patience in making them. So, you know, that was the one thing I really wanted to say, was make sure that you let it set. And when I mixed my gelatin into my glycerin, the last time that I did it, I left some of the gelatin was still very powdery and piled in spots. This time, what I did was I had a little bit of a bigger bowl. I used a glass bowl because I didn't have that same plastic bowl I had in the video. But I used a little bit of a bigger glass bowl. And so when I put both of the glycerins in, you put the gelatin in, I just kind of, after it was all in, I sprinkled it very carefully all over the whole surface. Make sure that you get it spread around. You don't want to dump it right in the middle, because you have to let it bloom, is what they call it. You let it sit there, and I don't know what it does, but that's how it tells you on the box, is you take it and you put this on your what you're making, like whatever. I can't think, like juice. Like if you're going to make gelatin, you make it with juice, and you put this on the juice, you let it sit for a little bit, then you put some hot water in it, whatever. And so people ask, why don't you put the hot water in first or whatever? I don't know, because I followed the instructions on the packet, and it says put it on cold first. So put both of these in, put all 7 of your packets sprinkled lightly on top, and when you get done, if there's spots where it's kind of piled or very white, I just went ahead and I just spread it, just very light, barely touched it, didn't press it in or anything, but I just moved it around, and then all of it got wet. I had much less of the little clumps in it by doing that. And I think the part that I left powdery before I mixed it, you know, I just kind of sprinkled it on top, didn't touch it in the video. I think that those were the parts that maybe got a little clumpy. So, and again, you do have to mix it for that first 5 minutes and then go ahead and follow the steps in the video. But when you get it all sprinkled in, if you have spots that are just kind of a little bit piled in white, just spread them out a little bit and then let it sit however long you're supposed to let it sit. I think it was a minute or something. So those are my tips, and those are the extra things that we will need for next week. We'll need the cutting boards and because now here's our big piece of cardboard. There's our cutting mat, because, you know, that way we can move this around. And then here is our cover. I cut the piece of cardboard for here a little bit bigger than the pans. I also have a piece of cardboard in here. But I did that so this could sit on here, and now I can pick this whole thing up and I can go put it wherever I need to put it. And it'll be easier to store than just a jelly plate like that. And I thought about just taking this one, because when you buy jelly plates, they come with 2 pieces of plastic. And I thought about taking the second cutting mat, and then we wouldn't need the other, you know, the silver pan or whatever. But, you know, I'm afraid that any of these little air pockets that sit there, if you let it sit for a long time, and jelly plating takes a long time when you're doing it. It's something you have to kind of have some time to do. And so you may not get it out that often. When you get it out, you'll play with it a lot, and then you'll put it away and you won't use it for a while because you'll have a lot of papers to play with. But I'm afraid that these bubbles will leave marks in my jelly plate. And so I just don't want to do that. I want to just have the aluminum over the top where nothing is touching the top of my jelly plate. So when I come back on Tuesday, we are going to try this. We're going to see if those bubbles make a difference. Even if they do, it'll be texture. We'll use it on Tuesday, and then I'll remelt it and get a smoother surface. But we're going to see what it does, just so you'll know if yours turns out that way. But again, this was on the bottom of my pan. If I would have left it, any of those bubbles would have raised to the other side, which was the top of the jelly plate at the time. And see, this is very smooth, except it has a few spots on it, but I did it wrong. So I wanted to catch you and say, hey, don't do what I did. The video tells you wait 3 to 5 hours, but I didn't. So That's what happens when you don't listen. So thank you very much for stopping by. I hope that you get a chance to get your jelly plate made and that you get a chance to play with it on Tuesday with me. This is really fun to do. So thanks again for stopping by. I hope that each and every one of you has an outstanding day. Bye-bye.